How to be stoic in the modern world. Picture this. You wake up to 17 notifications screaming for your attention. Your boss sends another urgent email at midnight. Social media bombards you with images of everyone else's seemingly perfect life. Traffic is gridlocked. Your deadline is tomorrow. And somewhere in the chaos, you feel like you're drowning in a world that demands everything from you but gives you no roadmap to navigate it. Sound familiar? You're not alone. We live in the most connected yet anxious generation in human history. We have more opportunities than any civilization before us. Yet we're paralyzed by choice, overwhelmed by information, and constantly seeking validation from strangers on the internet. But what if I told you there's an ancient philosophy, tested by emperors and slaves alike, that could transform how you handle every single challenge the modern world throws at you? What if the secret to unshakable confidence, inner peace, and genuine success was discovered over 2,000 years ago by a group of thinkers who faced plagues, wars, and political upheaval that would make our daily problems seem trivial? Welcome to Stoicism, the philosophy that taught Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius how to lead an empire, former slave Epictetus how to find freedom in chains, and countless others how to master themselves in a world they couldn't control. Today, you're going to discover why Silicon Valley executives, professional athletes, and world leaders are turning to these ancient principles to thrive in our hyper-connected, high-pressure world. You'll learn the 3 pillars that separate those who merely survive from those who truly master their destiny. And by the end of this video, you'll have practical tools that will fundamentally change how you respond to stress, setbacks, and inevitable chaos of modern life. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or passively accepting whatever life throws at you. This is about developing an inner fortress so strong that external circumstances lose their power over your peace of mind. This is about becoming the kind of person who turns obstacles into opportunities and finds strength in situations that break others. The Stoics had a saying, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you'll find strength. In the next 20 minutes, you're going to discover exactly what that means and how to apply it to every area of your life. Let's begin your journey to self-mastery. Part 1. The discipline of perception, seeing reality clearly. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his personal journal, which we now know as Meditations, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This wasn't the luxury of a privileged emperor speaking from his ivory tower. This was a man who spent years on brutal military campaigns, dealing with plagues that killed millions, managing political betrayals, and watching his children die before him. Yet he discovered something profound. The same event can destroy one person while making another stronger. The difference isn't what happens to us, but in how we perceive and interpret what happens to us. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. 2 entrepreneurs launched competing startups in the same industry. 6 months later, both companies fail. The first entrepreneur sees this as confirmation that he's not cut out for business. He interprets every investor rejection, every technical problem, every setback as evidence of his inadequacy. He quits, bitter and defeated. The second entrepreneur sees the same failure as expensive education. She dissects every mistake, learns from every rejection, and uses the experience to build a stronger foundation for her next venture. Same event, radically different perceptions, completely opposite outcomes. The Stoics call this the discipline of perception, and it's the foundation of everything else. Before you can control your responses, before you can build resilience, you must first learn to see things as they actually are, not as your emotions, fears, or desires paint them to be. In our modern world, this skill has never been more crucial. We're bombarded with information designed to trigger emotional responses. News outlets profit from our outrage. Social media algorithms feed us content that confirms our biases and amplifies our insecurities. Advertisement constantly tells us we're incomplete without their products. But here's what the Stoics understood that we've forgotten. Initial impressions are often wrong, and our emotional reactions are usually disproportionate to reality. When your boss criticizes your work, your mind might immediately jump to, "I'm going to get fired," "I'm terrible at my job," or "everyone thinks I'm incompetent." But what actually happened? Someone pointed out areas for improvement in a specific project. That's it. The The Stoic practice begins with separating facts from interpretations. Facts are objective and undeniable. Interpretations are subjective and often unhelpful. When you lose money in an investment, that's a fact. Thinking, I'm terrible with money, or I'll never be financially successful, are interpretations that serve no constructive purpose. Epictetus taught his students to ask themselves, is this something that's up to me or not up to me? This simple question revolutionizes how you approach every situation. Your co-worker's mood, the traffic, the weather, your boss's decision, other people's opinions of you. These things are not up to you. Your response to your co-worker, how you plan your commute, whether you bring an umbrella, how you perform your work, how much value you place on others' opinions. These things are completely up to you. This isn't about denying that external events affect us. Of course they do. Losing a job is stressful regardless of your philosophy. The Stoic approach is about focusing your mental energy where it can actually make a difference. You can't control whether you get laid off, but you can control how you prepare for that possibility, how you respond when it happens, and what steps you take afterward. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited. Our brains are constantly creating stories to make sense of events, and these stories often cause more suffering than the events themselves. When you learn to catch these automatic interpretations and question them, you reclaim enormous mental energy that was previously wasted on worry, anger, and frustration about things beyond your control. The practice is simple, but not easy. Throughout your day, when you notice yourself getting emotionally hijacked by a situation, pause and ask, what actually happened here? What story am I telling myself about what happened? Is this story helpful or harmful? More often than not, you'll discover that your interpretation was more dramatic than reality, and simply recognizing this reduces the emotional charge significantly. Part 2. The discipline of action, aligning your behavior with your values. Knowing how to think clearly is only the beginning. The second pillar of Stoic practice is the discipline of action, taking what you've learned about perception and translate it into consistent, principled behavior. This is where philosophy becomes practical wisdom, where understanding becomes transformation. Seneca, one of Rome's most influential Stoic philosophers, was also one of its wealthiest citizens and served as advisor to Emperor Nero. He understood better than anyone the gap between knowing what's right and actually doing what's right. He wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Recognizing that meaningful change requires not just intellectual understanding, but committed action aligned with your deepest values. The Stoics believe that the highest form of human flourishing comes from living according to virtue, which they defined as wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. But these weren't abstract concepts to be admired from a distance. They were daily practices to be embodied in every decision, every interaction, every response to both opportunity and adversity. Let's start with courage, because in our modern context, courage rarely means charging into battle. Instead, it means having difficult conversations when avoiding them would be easier. It means standing up for your principles when peer pressure pushes you toward compromise. It means taking calculated risks when growth requires leaving your comfort zone. It means admitting when you're wrong and making amends even when your ego resists. Consider the courage required to set boundaries in our hyper-connected world. Your phone buzzes with a work email at 9 p.m. on Sunday. The old version of you might immediately respond, driven by anxiety about appearing unresponsive or fear of missing something important. The Stoic version of you asks different questions. Is this truly urgent or just labeled as such? What values am I reinforcing by responding immediately to non-emergency communications outside work hours? What kind of precedent am I setting for my own well-being and my family's time? Acting with courage means having the difficult conversation with your boss about reasonable boundaries rather than silently resenting the intrusion. It means being clear about your availability rather than passively accepting an unsustainable workload. This isn't about being confrontational or inflexible. It's about being intentional and principled in how you engage with the demands of modern life. Justice in the Stoic sense isn't just about legal fairness, but about treating others with dignity and contributing positively to your community. In our interconnected world, this means considering the broader impact of your actions. from how you treat service workers to how you engage in online discussions to the companies you choose to support with your spending. The Stoic practice of justice asks you to consider, how does this action affect not just me, but the people around me? When you're stuck in traffic, do you drive aggressively, adding to the stress and danger for everyone? Or do you use the time for reflection or learning? When disagreeing with someone online, do you contribute to the toxicity and polarization that's damaging our social fabric? Or do you model the kind of thoughtful discourse you want to see more of? Wisdom involves continuously learning and questioning your assumptions. The modern world changes so rapidly that yesterday's expertise can become tomorrow's outdated thinking. Stoic wisdom means staying curious, admitting when you don't know something, seeking out perspectives that challenge your views, and being willing to change your mind when presented with better information. This is particularly crucial in our age of information overload and confirmation bias. Wisdom means curating your information diet as carefully as you curate your physical diet. It means seeking out primary sources rather than relying on secondhand interpretations. It means following your intellectual curiosity even when it leads you to uncomfortable conclusions about beliefs you've held for years. Temperance, perhaps the most challenging virtue in our age of excess, means finding the right balance in all things. This isn't about depriving yourself of pleasure or living an austere life. It's about being intentional with your choices rather than being driven by impulse or social pressure. In a world designed to capture and monetize your attention, temperance means being selective about what you allow into your consciousness. It means choosing quality over quantity in your entertainment, your relationships, your commitments, and your consumption. It means saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. The discipline of action requires daily practice. Each morning, the Stoics would reflect on their principles and set intentions for how they wanted to embody them that day. Each evening, they would review their actions, celebrating what went well and learning from what could be improved, without harsh self-judgment. This isn't about perfection. Even Marcus Aurelius, writing in his private journal, constantly reminded himself of these principles because he knew how easy it is to fall back into reactive patterns. The goal isn't to become a perfect Stoic sage overnight, but to gradually align more of your actions with your values, to reduce the gap between who you are and who you want to become. Part 3. The discipline of will, accepting what you cannot change. The final and perhaps most profound aspect of Stoic practice is the discipline of will, learning to work harmoniously with reality, rather than exhausting yourself fighting against what you cannot change. This is where Stoicism often gets misunderstood as passive acceptance or resignation, but nothing could be further from the truth. This is about channeling your energy toward maximum effectiveness by accepting constraints within which you must operate. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of philosophy's most influential teachers, understood this discipline better than anyone. He couldn't choose his circumstances, but he could choose his response to them. He couldn't control his master's decisions, but he could control his own mind. His most famous teaching, "Some things are within our power, while others are not," came from lived experience of finding freedom within the most constraining circumstances imaginable. The discipline of will begins with a radical acceptance of reality as it is, not as you wish it were or think it should be. This doesn't mean you stop working to improve things or become passive in the face of injustice. It means you stop wasting mental and emotional energy fighting against facts that are already established, freeing up that energy for productive action within current reality. Let's apply this to a common modern scenario. You've been working on a project for months, putting in extra hours, sacrificing weekends, believing it will lead to a promotion. Then you discover the company has decided to eliminate your entire department due to budget constraints. You have two choices in how you respond to this reality. The first response is to rage against the unfairness, to replay all the hours you invested, to focus on how the company has betrayed your loyalty, to bitter about the timing or the way you found out. This response is entirely natural and human, but it's also entirely unproductive. It keeps you stuck in the past, paralyzed by resentment, unable to move forward effectively. The Stoic response begins with acknowledging what has happened without the emotional dramatization. The facts are simple. The department is being eliminated. Your job will end. You need to find new employment. These facts exist regardless of how you feel about them. Your feelings are valid, but they don't change the reality you now need to navigate. From this foundation of acceptance, you can channel your energy toward productive action. You can update your resume, reach out to your network, perhaps use this transition as an opportunity to pivot toward work that better aligns with your values. You might even find that this apparent setback opens doors you never would have walked through otherwise. The discipline will also applies to your relationships and interactions with others. You cannot control how other people behave, what they think of you, or how they respond to your words and actions. You can influence these things through your own behavior, but ultimately, other people will make their own choices based on their own values, fears, desires, and circumstances. This realization is incredibly liberating. How much mental energy do you spend trying to manage other people's emotions or reactions? How often do you compromise your own values to avoid disappointing someone or to maintain an image that may not even be accurate? The Stoic approach is to focus on being the kind of person you respect, treating others with kindness and integrity, and then allowing them the dignity of their own responses. This is particularly relevant in our social media age, where we're constantly exposed to other people's opinions, judgments, and reactions. The discipline will mean sharing your authentic thoughts without being attached to how they're received. It means offering help without expecting gratitude. It means being kind without requiring kindness in return. But perhaps the most challenging aspect of the discipline will involve accepting your own limitations and mortality. We live in a culture that promises unlimited growth, endless optimization, and the possibility of having it all. The Stoics took a different approach. They regularly contemplated the temporary nature of everything they valued, not to become depressed or nihilistic, but to appreciate what they had while they had it and to reduce their attachment to outcomes they couldn't guarantee. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself that he was just a brief arrangement of atoms that would one day return to the earth, that his empire would eventually fall, that everything he cared about was impermanent, rather than making him despairing. This perspective made him more present, more grateful, and less anxious about protecting things that were never truly his to begin with. This practice of negative visualization, imagining the loss of what you value, isn't about becoming pessimistic. It's about building emotional resilience and appreciating what you have. When you regularly contemplate the possibility of losing your health, your relationships, your job, or your possessions, you stop taking them for granted. You become more present in enjoying them and less devastated if you actually do lose them. The discipline will also means accepting that you will face difficulties, setbacks, and pain. These aren't bugs in the system of life. They're features. The Stoics believed that obstacles were opportunities to practice virtue, that difficulties were the raw material for building character and wisdom. This doesn't mean seeking out unnecessary suffering or enjoying pain. It means recognizing that trying to eliminate all discomfort from your life is both impossible and counterproductive. Some of your greatest growth will come from navigating challenges you didn't choose. Some of your most meaningful achievements will require enduring temporary discomfort for long-term benefit. Final, building your Stoic practice for lasting transformation. As we reach the end of our exploration, you might be wondering how to take these ancient principles and make them practically applicable in your daily 21st century life. The beauty of Stoicism lies not in its complexity, but in its simplicity. Not in grand gestures, but in consistent small practices that compound over time into profound personal transformation. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology has confirmed. Lasting change comes not from dramatic overhauls, but from steady, consistent practice. Just as you build physical strength through regular exercise, you build mental and emotional resilience through daily application of Stoic principles. The goal isn't perfection but progress, not becoming a sage overnight, but gradually becoming more skilled at navigating life's inevitable challenges. Your morning routine becomes your first opportunity for Stoic practice. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone and allowing external stimuli to dictate your mental state, take 5 minutes to set intentions for the day. Reflect on the 3 disciplines. How will you practice clear perception when faced with challenging situations? What values will guide your actions throughout the day? What aspects of the day are within your control? And what will you need to accept as beyond your influence? Seneca wrote daily letters to his friend Lucilius, using the practice to reflect on philosophical principles and their practical applications. You don't need a philosophical correspondence partner, but you can adopt a similar practice through journaling. Each evening, Spend a few minutes reviewing your day through a Stoic lens. When did you respond to events with clarity versus getting caught up in emotional reactions? Where did your actions align with your values? And where did you fall short? What can you learn from both your successes and your mistakes? This evening reflection isn't about self-criticism or perfectionism. The Stoics emphasize learning and growth over self-judgment. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of his principles in his personal writings, not because he had mastered them, but because he knew he needed regular reinforcement to embody them consistently. Throughout your day, develop the habit of the Stoic pause. When you notice yourself becoming emotionally reactive, angry, anxious, or frustrated, take a moment to apply the 3 disciplines. First, examine your perception. What actually happened versus what story you're telling yourself about what happened. Second, consider your values. How do you want to respond in a way that aligns with the person you want to become? Third, acknowledge what you can and cannot control. Where should you focus your energy for maximum effectiveness? This pause becomes easier with practice. Initially, you might catch yourself hours after an emotional reaction, realizing you could have responded more skillfully. That's progress. Gradually, you'll catch yourself in the middle of a reaction and be able to course correct. Eventually, you'll find yourself naturally responding from a place of clarity and choice rather than emotional impulse. The Stoic path also involves continuous learning and intellectual humility. Read the original sources: Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, Epictetus' Discourses, Seneca's letters and essays, but also engage with modern applications and interpretations. Stoicism isn't a museum piece to be admired from a distance, but a living philosophy to be adapted and applied to contemporary challenges. Seek out others who are interested in philosophical living. While Stoicism emphasizes personal responsibility and self-reliance, having a community of like-minded individuals provides support, accountability, and different perspectives on how to apply these principles. This might be a local philosophy group, an online community, or simply friends who share your interest in intentional living. Remember that setbacks are part of the process, not signs of failure. You will have days when you react poorly to criticism, when you waste mental energy, worry about things beyond your control, when you act contrary to your stated values. The Stoics expected this and built forgiveness and renewed commitment into their practice. Each mistake becomes data for improvement. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen your philosophical muscles. The ultimate goal of Stoic practice isn't to eliminate all negative emotions or to become indifferent to outcomes. It's to develop what the Greeks called ataraxia, an unshakable tranquility that comes from aligning your life with reason and virtue. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you, because you've developed the skills to respond skillfully to any situation. In our modern world of unprecedented change, information overload, and social complexity, these ancient tools for mental clarity, ethical action, and emotional resilience are more relevant than ever. The Stoics face their own versions of political turmoil, economic uncertainty, and social change, and they develop practices that help them not just survive, but thrive. Your journey towards self-mastery begins with a single step: choosing to take responsibility for your responses to life's circumstances. You cannot control what happens to you, but you have complete authority over what you do with what happens to you. You cannot control other people's behavior, but you can control your own character. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control your effort and your values. The Stoics believed that this kind of self-mastery was the highest form of human achievement, more valuable than wealth, power, or fame, because it was the one thing that could never be taken away from you. External circumstances will change. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall through. But your ability to respond with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance remains entirely within your power. Start today. Start now. The world needs more people who can think clearly under pressure, act according to their principles rather than their impulses, and maintain their equilibrium in the face of chaos. The world needs more Stoics, and with consistent practice, you can become one of them. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, words that have echoed across 2 millennia to reach you in this moment. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your journey to that strength begins now.